All right. And greetings, everyone, and welcome to Refugees program where we discuss survival and disaster preparedness. And today we're going to be doing a movie review. This movie called Homestead that just recently came out, talked about what appeared to be a terrorist attack with a nuclear device. Of course, I won't give too much of the movie away, but we will be discussing the movie. So if you haven't seen it, I'm going to say, as they always say, that there may be some things that may be spoiler alerts. So we'll try our best not to cross that threshold. However, we're going to talk about this movie and how it has real life ramifications. So, with that, we always want for you to subscribe and to follow us on YouTube and on our other social media platforms. You can go to Linktree, a link tree / Refuge Depot. And there you can find not only our other social media platforms, but also you can find our books, The Inescapable Famine, Immunity Empowerment, Winter Survival Guide, and a Tornado Survival Guide as well. And as we see, there's been a rash of tornadoes starting up, and we're just seeing extreme weather. Period. But so to get into this, I want to introduce my co-host, and we'll start with Brother Sanford Whitlow, and we'll bring you on first. Greetings, brother. How you doing?
Outstanding. How you doing, my brother?
Good, good. Looking good, brother. Appreciate you joining us. And we'll bring on our next co-host, Mr. Aaron Olinger. All right. Greetings, brother. How are you doing today?
Doing great today, Steve.
All right. All right, good. And so, there's been a rash. Let's just talk real first about a rash of movies that have recently come out dealing with civil unrest, dealing with possible terrorist attacks. Um, Give me you all's thoughts. Why do you think these type of movies are coming out now? And brother Whitlow, you want to tackle that first?
Well, I think it's just I think it's a precursor to let you know that they know that things are on the horizon. And
Mm,
and what I mean by they, I just mean the whole entire government. I mean the state of the world right now. We've had a couple of things
right.
that happened just this last couple of days right before the New Year, where there was an incident in New Orleans and one at the in Vegas. I didn't
Right.
send it to you, but I sent it to Aaron about 30 minutes ago, where I was looking at a guy I watched named Sean Ryan, and he actually had a guy who was on his show who had turned information over to the FBI that the guy who had the cyber truck that was in Vegas, he emailed him with
Mm,
concerns about what was going on and didn't tell him he was necessarily going to Trump Tower and set this thing off, but he said
hmm
he was being tagged by Homeland Security in the government, and at that moment he was driving a V-bid, and and they knew he was driving it, and he was trying to make it to the border. And he didn't think he was going to make it there. It's unbelievable. I mean, this just came out. Now, I don't know if Aaron had a chance
mm,
to look at it or not, but so this guy was actually telling people that something was going on, and he disclosed why, and he said it had to do something with some war crimes that he knew about.
mm,
Also, some other things. He talked about the drones in this message, and he told him, you know, he knew what the drones were about, and that the United States and China were only two countries that had this technology for these particular drones and what they were capable of. It's
hmm
pretty intense. It's about an eight,
Right.
10 minute piece of information that just got released. And like I said, I probably sent it out to about 20 guys I know that do paramilitary work and some high official law enforcement. I sent it to Aaron. Like I said, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but it's unbelievable.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. That's something to look at. That whole thing that's going on with that is unbelievable because both of these individuals, the one who drove his truck through the crowd in Louisiana, and the individual who um, apparently committed suicide uh, in the front of Trump Tower, which I'm waiting to see the cameras to show him getting out, or however he might have set this truck on fire and committed this suicide in front of Trump Tower, and it just seems like there was nobody there. Uh, but anyway, they have connected these two gentlemen with being in the same brigade. They connected these two individuals with renting, I think, from the same rental car place. And so there's so many different connections that it's hard to believe today in what you might call coincidence. For me, there's no such thing as a coincidence. That there's definitely something that's bigger going on behind the scenes, from what it appears to me. But brother Aaron, how about yourself? Why do you think? And if you want to comment too on that current event, but why do you think these movies are coming out now today?
Well, some of it could be predictive programming, and others could be just to desensitize the public. I mean, if they put something before your eye often enough, when something happens, it won't be that shocking to you. You'll be like, "Oh well, just another day." But
Hmm.
Sarah Adams, I don't know if you know who she is, a CIA analyst. She recently made an announcement on a
Okay.
talk show that there's over 1,200 Al Qaeda operatives inside the United States right now.
Hmm.
And, it amazed me that they know that. So why did you
Hmm.
let them come in? But they're already here and things could begin to happen. And that's the reason why I felt this movie was so timely, because the terrorist attack that occurred in this movie actually occurred using recreational civilian boats with a tactical
Hmm.
nuke inside the hold. They attacked both the East Coast and the West Coast simultaneously. And then shortly after the attacks occurred, Russia did something that brought the power grid down. Now, for those who don't know, there's been different war game scenarios ran based upon the power grid being taken down, whether it's EMP, whether it's nuclear, whether it's cyber, whatever method is used. If that grid goes down for 6 to 18 months, it's predicted that 90% of the US population will not survive that time period. In the movie, there's a quote in the movie that says that technology is our God and that we worship at the altar of convenience. Once we lose that technology, once we lose that convenience, we've already lost the skills or the basic knowledge of how to survive. And we've done it within just the last 2 generations. Prior to that,
Absolutely.
all the generations knew how to do things. And what we call survival, our grandparents called everyday living. So,
Right.
but now we want to
And,
call it survival because of technology. But
right.
go ahead, Steve.
No, no, I just wanted to just agree with what you're saying, is that, we have by design become domesticated and dependent on the system, on government, because I definitely remember growing up, going over my grandmother's house and walking up to her front door. We would have to walk under grapevines, you know what I mean? And, you know, at some point in time, they would take them grapes off and we would clean our feet and smash them grapes into jam and eat the jam. Um, and then I would go down south, of course, to my father, and down there they would be raising food. But now you find it you find more people now beginning though to have raised gardens, raised beds in their backyard. So this is definitely a good sign. But I think that it definitely needs to happen on a larger level because what we're not being told is that for 3 consecutive years, America has been experiencing serious drought, and they're not telling the public that a serious famine is about to occur. But we'll get into that at another time. So, what I would like to do is just play this clip from the movie, this trailer, and then we'll get right on into the discussion. All right. So let me put this on up.
Well, before you play the trailer, let's
Sure.
say 2 words: fair use. Fair use.
Fair use. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our brother always covering the bases for sure.
We got hit.
Does the sun
America's just been attacked.
go on shining?
But this is the story of how it began.
Los Angeles has been struck by a bomb.
Hold your breath. Hold your breath.
It might be nuclear.
I saw this.
So what?
We never come back.
After today, our lives will never be the same.
We have looting and widespread panic.
Hey,
Daddy has a place for us to go. We'll be together.
The city's on fire.
there's a guy been planning for the big one. Called a few months back, needs security people.
What is this place?
Welcome to Homestead. Your guys have to learn how to farm.
We grow our food. We raise our animals. Can you handle yourself with a gun?
This might be the most prepared location in the Rockies. Everyone's got one in, and I mean everyone.
My family's out here, and we're starving to death.
I wish we could help, but we can't.
You can or you won't.
Our kids need us to be strong.
Please.
People are gonna die at this gig.
They're trespassers. The hills.
They're stealing your grain. They've cut off your solar power.
We need a world where people help strangers, not shoot at them.
Sometimes we think we're doing the right thing, and then it all goes wrong.
It's the end of the world.
It's time for you to take full control. It's complicated. Do you think that you're above the law? Do you think that the rules aren't for you?
Is this an ark, or is this a fortress?
It's our home.
It's the end of the world.
All right. And so that was a trailer from the movie Homestead. And I think that trailer pretty much, it covered a lot of ground that, that the movie did discuss. And so let's get right on into this discussion. First, let's go ahead. Brother Aaron, you said you had some information about the production studio that produced that.
Yeah, they're called Angel Studios. They're relatively new. They've only been around since 2021. There was 5 founders that founded this production company. One guy is just an outsider. The other 4 are all family members. They are a faith-based production company, and they're also an independent media company, which that gives them a great niche because they don't have to follow any political agenda or whatever. They have complete autonomy on the creativity that they're allowed to use, and that's what I like. I mean, 2 of the movies that they've done since 2021, they've probably got 6 or 7 out there. One's called The Sound of Freedom, which that's very emotional if you get a chance to see it. And then another one's called The Chosen, would be just 2 examples. Now, this movie Homestead itself is based on the first 30 days after the United States is attacked. And the attack is done in such a manner that they use terrorist proxies. So there's no nation that we can go against to retaliate on. So now that the grid is down, 30 days going in, these people have to try to get from the city or wherever they're at to this guy's rally point, or the homestead, they call it. And the first thing you notice is the vulnerabilities. And I know Sanford's going to want to comment on this, because the movie itself is a deep dive into the emotional depths of survival, sacrifice, and hope. And the vulnerabilities they show where the terrorists used regular commercial vessels to sell nukes right up to our coastline to detonate them, because they know that the Coast Guard is not going to check every ship coming ashore. So all they got to do is get within a mile or two of our shore and then set them off, and we've got problems. Well, what have we seen recently in the news as far as vulnerabilities? We've seen spy balloons that have gone through this nation. We've seen drones. In the movie, they use boats. And there's rumors that there could be suitcase or backpack nukes inside our country right now. So our enemies is going to attack us based upon our vulnerabilities. And if things can just fly in here and fly out or do whatever, being unchecked, how can we defend ourselves from an outside threat? I'll stop there for right now.
All right. And brother Sanford, how about yourself?
Well, what Aaron's saying is 100% true. We're in a very vulnerable state with what's happening at the borders, and that's north and southern borders. A lot of times we forget about the northern border. Northern border is wide open. I hear it's buck wild up there coming in. And the southern border, which we hear about all the time, we're only hearing a fraction of what's really going on there, and the availability to people just to come in and out as they want to. You never hear what was, and I don't want to do too much ahead of time, but how Aaron said how they showed them coming in from the shore, and we never talk about that because that's wide open. I can rent a yacht right now, and the three of us can rent a yacht, and we can go up and down the coast and wave our hands at the Coast Guards as they go by. And they would not say one thing. And we can be miles within a border of any state and do something devastating like the movie shows. So the borders are wide open. On top of that, we're wide open from the standpoint of just the disbelief that this is going to happen. But we have, we have that privilege. And they say, I forget the guy's name who put the quote, but it says, what privilege is not, how is it? Privilege is not recognized by those who have it, or something like that. So we have so much privilege, and we're so comfortable that we have put ourselves in a place that we think that the government or any particular entity can handle anything that happens to us. Well, I mean, it's not true. And, I enjoyed this movie. And like I said, we'll get into it more depth. It was so, part of it was so surreal because I see it every day. And I'm talking about just the ability to want to be vulnerable.
Right.
I have a saying I say to my wife sometime, and my daughter and other people I know. I say, tell me what lie you want me to tell you. What you want me to tell you? What lie you want me to tell you? And I believe that we're just in a place in general where, we want to hear lies.
Right. Well, let's get into it. Let's touch on some of the different aspects of the movie, as you all are both saying. So one of the things that we recognize in the movie was the power grid, as we were saying. And so we could talk about not just the power grid from the aspect of the movie, but just the vulnerability of the power grid, the American power grid, period, right? Because America seems to not want to spend money on infrastructure. And the power grid is one of those uh, infrastructure needs that is antiquated in a lot of cases. In some situations, you have in America rolling blackouts. And this is what you hear about in third world nations. But what would you all say as far as the power grid and the power grid going down? And if you could, Aaron, repeat what you were saying about survival if the power grid goes down.
Okay. Uh, let me add something, and I'm gonna come to the power grid. One of the things they showed in the movie is the people that were closest to the shoreline tried to call their relatives to tell them to grab their bug out bags and go, but cell phone reception was spotty, and in some cases it was down. Now, the last time we had cell phone reception down in the United States across the board was 9/11. The government shut cell phones down, and you couldn't make a voice call. Most cell phone towers have a 3-day battery backup in the event that the power grid goes down. Not all of them have it, but most of them do. So you got 3 days that you can try to get a message out. Now, if they done turned off the voice calls, or you got spotty reception, text messages and emails are your best chance of being able to communicate with someone if you're using your cell phone. Now, of course, citizens band and ham radios are going to be better, but if you don't have that option, don't forget to use text messages and emails, because during 9/11, texts and emails were allowed to go through where the phone calls were blocked at that point. And then again, like I said, with all the modern game technologies that they ran war games in case our grid goes down, and even the Obama's movie, The World We Left Behind, that was all based upon the power grid being taken down. Now, what you got to look at, even the recent game they ran with this new AI, it clearly, again, the AI said 91% of the US population would be dead in 6 to 18 months. Everything else said 90%. So you're only talking 1% difference. People will not be able to make it. You're not going to be able to go and buy groceries at the grocery store. The banks will be shut down. ATMs are down. Gas stations are down. Grocery stores are down. So the worst case imaginable will be occurring. Now, for those like the Amish or some of the third world people that's come from other nations into this country, they grew up not having modern conveniences. They would have the best chance of making it through this situation because they know what to do. Other people will not know what to do. They will not put supplies back, and panic is going to ensue, and it will ensue on day one. Now, if people are civil-minded and try to maintain their civility for as long as they can, you might get 3 days at best.
Right.
The moment people realize that power grid's not coming back on, or the United States is under attack and nukes are being used, civilities goes out the door the same day. It's going to be a slugfest in that moment. Now, what made this movie nice was the people who hit the highway the fastest. I'm talking 30 minutes or less, was able to make it to where they were going. The ones who had to pack and do whatever, they got caught in the traffic jams. So have a bug out bag ready, and they didn't have to have a lot of supplies in it. They just had to have enough gear and food and water in it to get them to the location they was going to, which was the Homestead. So to have some super big bag for each individual wasn't even necessary in this case. They just brought what clothes they had on their back, a few extra clothes, whatever supplies they had, their firearms, different things, depending upon what skill set they were. That's what they came to the party with. Now, the Green Beret commander that was head of his own strike team, he showed up with 5 or 6 of his guys off the rip, but 12 more showed up later. of his unit. The one lady who got the phone call from her husband, even though her sister owned the homestead with the brother-in-law, it was probably a joke to her. You know, they probably had that conversation. Yeah, when something goes down, we want you to come here. She goes and picks a Tesla as her bug out vehicle. And as she gets into it, the reality of what happened hit her so hard, she almost had a nervous breakdown right there in the car. I mean, those kids are counting on her getting them to safety, and she's standing there shaking, can't even start the car. She don't even know if she's got everything she needs, and she's second guessing herself. I mean, when you practice something over and over, it becomes muscle memory. Obviously, for her, it wasn't practice. She just knew to grab a bag, get in the car, and go. But the problem with the Teslas is inside the city, there's plenty of places you can go charge up at. But when you go out into the sticks, where are you going to charge that rascal up at? I know people down south that live outside the city in Alabama and places say there's no place around here that you can charge that car up. But that's what she picked as her bug out vehicle. Came back to haunt her a little bit later because when she needed fuel, there was nowhere where she could get it. But I'm going to stop there, give Sanford a chance to chime in there.
All right.
You know, one of the things I thought was interesting in that movie too, you're talking about Erin, you know, we talked about how she had gotten a Tesla and she had driven so far. And when she got in it, I said to myself in the theater, I said, she got about 1,000 miles. I said, she got about 1,000 miles. I said, and it's over completely. Talking about that, I had a guy who was doing work in our building back about 8-9 months ago. He had a brand new Hummer, okay, a 2024 Hummer, and he was coming from Michigan. And he told me that he got in trouble driving because he needed to charge it. Well, they look up charging stations, I guess, with an app, and every charging station he went to didn't have the adapter for the new Hummer.
Right.
So he couldn't even go to a regular charging station to charge his vehicle. And he said he got down to 8%. And he went to a store, and the guy said, there's a place about 20 miles down. I don't know if you can make it there. He said that you definitely can get it charged there. And I guess when he got there with his Hummer, he said he literally got there and pulled up and it cut off completely. And I forget how many hours, it took him a couple of hours before he had enough to even make it all the way here. That's something people need to think about in this modern time with these modern problems that can come along.
Right.
One of the things that Aaron mentioned too that I thought was really good, and they showed in the movie, he talked about the size of the bug out bags. It even made me look at something I need to do a little different. You know, they had what would be like a full-size roll suitcase that would be like the 50-pound bag limit for an airport. And I think I think I'm gonna repack and do the way I saw
that was
it.
good.
Yeah, because I said, you know what? I said this makes more sense.
Right. It did.
It makes more sense. One of the things when they got into the movie and trying to make their way there, where it showed how civilized people became uncivilized very quickly. When she was trying to find a station to fuel her Hummer, her Tesla, it was a gas station. People were lined up, and the gas station was a convenience store also, or a grocery store. And they were coming out in drones, going in drones, just taking stuff and trying to get gas and put stuff in their vehicles. And the desperation of a good woman, a good God-fearing woman, when she looked at her kids and she stole somebody else's vehicle so she could make the rest of the journey. I think that is a key. That was a key sign, and it's a truth. I think something that would be very true and prevalent if times get hard. I
Yep.
don't care how good you think your heart is.
That's
The
right.
instinct to survive and the willingness to survive will kick in, and you will do things you have never thought that you might do to try to survive, which
That's
also
right.
means that other people will do the same things too, though.
Absolutely.
So I
Yep.
think the mindset, as we talked about before, the mindset and being prepared that you may have to do some things that you've never thought you would have to do.
Yeah.
Take it to the next level. Those things are within you. I
Mm-hmm.
did think it was interesting how, and I never talk about, when we talk here, we never talk about firearms too much, but how even those people who had the bug out bags when they left their homes and stuff, they didn't have any ways to protect themselves
Mm-hmm.
when they got in the vehicles. They didn't have a can of bear spray. They didn't take
Right.
a butcher knife, and how they didn't
Yeah.
have any on board protection to protect themselves in the event somebody try to take their vehicle, try to take their bug out bags, try their modes of transportation, how they overlooked, and the instant was like, I got to go, and how like part of that being prepared was truly left out of being
Mm-hmm.
able to preserve and protect yourself during your journey to try to make it to the homestead. So I think one of the things that we always need to keep in mind, even as we prepare ourselves, if we have to relocate, and I think we'll talk about this later on, because one thing I wish the movie talked more about was if you had to stay in, but we can get to that at another
Right.
time. But if you had to
Yeah.
relocate, how it did not talk about or it didn't display a sense of being able to defend yourself or your goods and your transportation to where you need to be. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's all part of the plan that needs to be observed and prepared for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like definitely what you all are saying. So some of the things that just going off of what you all are saying is like, for instance, when we look at the communication, both the communication and the Tesla, one of the things that you talk about or mention every now and then is an EMP attack, and how that would just totally, knock out a lot of the vehicles that are driving on the road right now, and it would also affect the communication. One of the things that you were talking about, Brother Sanford, is America it has become a nation of individuals, where many people are in their own little silos. So you're absolutely right that when shit hits the fan, that we may be looking at a situation where it is a dog eat dog situation. And it was just fortunate enough in this movie that they did have somewhere to go, a homestead that they could go to. Because, like you're saying, for many of us, we're going to have to learn how to shelter in place. And one of the things that they showed in that movie was the neighbor's house being invaded, and like you were saying, that the neighbor didn't have any way to protect themselves. And another thing too is that there's a way that you can make it appear as though your house is either not lived in or nobody's there or something, that maybe we can talk about in a future show. One last thing that I wanted to touch on was the preparedness of the American people, and it was funny when you said when you said some of the foreigners, who have not been, in the comforts of America for a long time and have become domesticated. I'll tell you of some people who are going to do a lot better when shit hits the fan too. Is the homeless. The homeless, they know how to survive. And while everybody is going to be going crazy, guess what the homeless are going to be doing? They're going to be right there in their tents. They're going to be doing what they do, doing what they've been doing. So I think that that those are some of the things too. One last thing too is the highway, as you all were saying. I mean, in the movie, we saw where there were that the highway was packed and no cars were moving. And so that goes to saying that maybe we should, instead of thinking about getting on the highway, consider back roads, to maybe where we need to go, and other, and other ways of getting to where we may need to go, if that's the case. But let's go up into they had a situation where, let's get into relationships just within the family dynamic, because when that incident happened, there's a lot, whatever tension that's in the family is going to only be exacerbated by by the total collapse of society. What did you all take from what you saw as far as the relationships and the whole, just all the dynamics of the relationships in that movie?
Okay. Could I make one last point and then I'm gonna come to your thing?
Sure.
The thing that I want people to understand is when you got to bug out 30 minutes or less to leave your house, you got a chance of making it. And then if your bug out location, this is very important, is more than 2 hours away, 2 hours or less, I say you have a really good chance of making it there. If it's beyond 2 hours to get to it, you're not going to make it. There's going to be too many towns, even small towns, that you're going to have to try to get through. They're going to be landlocked, and there'll be militias out. There'll be groups of people out looking to jack you on the roadway. So if it's going to take you more than 2 hours to get there, you're not going to make it. So plan accordingly. Now, going back to what you said about the dynamics, the people at the Homestead, and I'm gonna call them hardcore in the sense that they were heavily trained in natural survival. They had a fish fully stocked pond, they had crops growing, they had orchards, they had the ability to can food, they had livestock, they knew how to butcher that livestock. Everybody on that homestead knew how to handle and live within nature naturally, without having to be a taker and go take stuff from people. The guy realized that, and when he planned the group, he picked people with specific skills to invite to the party. I mean, the PMC guy, the ex-Green Beret with his strike team, by PMC, that's private military contractor, you could tell him and his guys had pulled some triggers overseas somewhere. They were very professional in how they handled their weapons. They knew what they were doing, and they worked well together as a team. Anyone going up against them would have had their hands full. And he wanted the best people there. Once they got there, he made it clear to them that they were going to have to learn how to grow food. But they also made it clear, that special forces leader, that his people was going to have to learn tactics and stuff, in which case the special forces leader set up 4 QRF teams. That's quick reaction forces. So they could handle any threat coming at them day or night. They were pretty well set up. They had doctors, they had nurses, they had people of various levels. Even the PMC's, the Green Beret leader's wife, she appeared to have medic skills, and then she understood how to work computers. They had everything there that I saw to cover different things, except for grief counselors. And that I kind of got into a discussion with someone about, because he said, well, what do you need those for? Well, people are going to die. Survival is not a guarantee. You can sit back and say, well, hey, look, I'm going to give you a spot. Well, can you take your survival for granted at that point? Or is survival going to be earned day by day? I mean, I don't care how highly skilled you are. You could down the first day by the first bullet fired by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So you cannot automatically assume and take your survival for granted. Each day that goes by, everyone is contributing for the group. When they say teamwork makes the dream work, this place was a clear example of it. Everybody played a role, and then everyone was teaching someone else their skill set. So if someone got lost, there was someone that could step up. But there was no grief counselors there. And when that one boy ended up shooting someone, there was no one that could talk him down or help him handle that emotionally. Everyone doesn't have that in their heart to be able to fight on that level and deliver overwhelming force. Even one of the military guys, people said that he was having a problem with wanting to commit overwhelming force on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens.
Mhm.
But we were at war, whether people wanted to realize or not. We had just been nuked. East and West Coast was gone. And then the power grid was out in between. So technically we was at war. We're living under what they call without rule of law at that point. So everybody coming to the party is bringing stuff that is based on their skill set. Now, this guy who set up this place, he had already really planned out. And I mean, he was a great manager to manage all these different personalities that was coming together. But one of the personality conflicts that I saw were those who was the difference between the dependents and the hardcore members, because the dependents, they were more the, I don't want to say faith-based, but they were more the hopefuls. They believed in the possibilities, where the hardcore people only dealt with the facts, how long the supplies would last, how many things. And based upon that, we could only have so many people in here because we got just enough to cover this. And, you know, it caused a conflict between those that believed in the possibility versus those
Right.
who only believed in probability. But
Yeah.
I'm
And
stop there for now. I don't want to get too far ahead.
no, let's touch on that though, for real. I mean, let's be for real though. I mean, no spoilers though. Let's try not to give any spoilers, but let's be honest though. I mean, I agree like you that he had everything accounted for, as far as the supplies, you know, what could be rationed out to each individual to survive for so many days. But then there were those whose hearts, understandably, went out to those who were, we'll just say, outside the gates, who were totally unprepared, who didn't have any food, who didn't have any water, and wanted in. Um, as you were saying, that one of the things that did make the compound work was that those who were on the inside had skills that benefited the community, right? And without giving any spoilers away, just to say, in your own family, just allowing people to come in because your heart is, you know, feeling their suffering. I definitely understand that. I definitely understand that. However, what I think that has to be understood is, if you allow these people to come in, then you have to then cut the what you had as being able to supply people to live for so long, you know, and luckily, you know, well, I won't go into any more, but yeah, so there were skilled people, and they're just they had it all together, I think, until maybe the end. But let's go. What are your thoughts, Brother Sanford, as far as that dynamics with the relationships and everything else we just said?
I think one of the things it did was show a dynamic of the nature of men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Just their innate nature.
Right.
Because how Aaron mentioned the one gentleman's wife who it depicted she had a government job with some skill, some training, but still the mothering took precedence over some of the things that may have been needed for survival several times during
Right.
the whole thing. With the other guy, the same exact thing. His wife had and I'm not gonna say an over caring place, but
Right.
how that took precedence over what they had already been preparing for, and it was obvious that they had worked for this for years and planning for this, but
Mm-hmm.
saw the other human beings in front of her on the other side of that gate.
The reality of the situation.
Right. It changed the whole thing, and how she dropped a whole bunch of things to say it was more about the caring of
Mm-hmm.
the other people, and somehow it's just going to work. And I
Right.
think that's a major thing you have to think about when you are preparing yourself. Even if you're going to stay in place, you may have some neighbors or some family members who did not prepare, who took this thing for granted, and all of a sudden they know that Uncle Steve and Uncle Aaron, well, they've been getting ready. I'm going to Uncle Steve's house. I'm
Right.
going to Uncle Aaron's house, even though Aaron told me, don't come to my house. I'm going to Uncle Aaron's house anyway. So now,
Right.
because they were relying then on Uncle Steve and Uncle Aaron to have a caring that supersedes what they know that what needs to be done to survive. And
Right.
this is where, I talked about before, the mental preparedness and putting your mind in a certain place, man, that's paramount. But how
That's
my
key.
mother used to say something about being married. She said, remember this, son, if you got two different people, you got two different thoughts and ideals. She said, so I don't care just what happens off the cuff. Two different people, you have two different thoughts and ideals. So if you are not constantly with the people in your inner circle, kind of having these conversations and kind of doing the subliminal programming it's going to take to get to the next level to make yourself survive and persevere for what's in house, you may have a problem on your hands later on you're not ready for.
Mm-hmm.
And and like I said, I'm trying to talk around it without giving it all away, but that
Right.
was evident. That became an evident thing within the
Mm-hmm.
compound. And
Mm-hmm.
even with the people who may have had some amount of skill outside, if the guy running the homestead felt like it was minimum, his discipline said, you might just do this, and I don't need that to make this happen. So I think in our own preparedness for anything that may come forth, we have to put our minds in a certain place. Aaron mentioned about one young man who had to take a life in the movie and how they didn't have certain kind of support. Well, I think one of the things, if you do that, if you have a compound like that, you do need a spiritual being in there of some sort that
Absolutely.
can refer to some biblical things to show you where you have to be a certain way to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Noah was given the charge, Noah had certain things he had to do to survive. And he could not take everybody with him. That was not his
Right.
charge. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you have
Oh
to have
yeah.
somebody that has a foundation like that can explain those things ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think the willingness to be able to isolate yourself even from the people within your confines, that you still have
Mm-hmm.
to look out for you. One of the things me and Aaron talked about when the private military contractors came in, only one of them had a family base. The other ones didn't have a family base at all. So with that being said, I mean, they may have a whole different purpose.
Right.
It doesn't involve family.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about the people that you have within your circle. Are they in the same place that you need to be or for the greater good of everybody. Everybody's going to be able to get along with and understand everybody has a place. That kind of thing is important. Like I said, I'm trying not to give too much of it away.
And
Go ahead,
I
Aaron.
know.
Okay. I definitely want to address what you're touching on there, because there was a conflict there. Everybody that showed up brought their own troubles and old ways with them, regardless of what their faiths were, regardless of whether they were liberal or extremists, whatever. This guy invited all these people based upon their skill set, not knowing other things about them. Now, if you notice, there was no alcoholics that showed up. There was no drug addicts that showed up. He didn't invite them. He was trying to weed out any element that could go through withdrawals and then have snappy attitudes and be a cancer within the group, basically. And maintaining the mental health of everyone is highly important. Some people don't have the ability to set a mindset and have the discipline to stick through it. The ones who didn't, like when the boy shot the one guy and they brought him into the med bay, the doctors and nurses there called it murder. I mean, it caused a split within the whole organization. The dependents was siding that it was murder and said we weren't at war, which we was at war, but their minds could not accept that concept. And two, the hardcore people felt he was justified in doing what he did because the person was aiming a gun at him. So, you know, when I say members bring their troubles and their old ways with them, the way they think and stuff, that all comes into being. How long will it be before people get too comfortable to where they start not to get along? And some of the special forces guys, they were already talking about rebellion. They felt, well, we got the guns, we got the training. They was trying to get their leader. You take it over. Let's take this over. And then the guy was like, well, what are we going to do? Make everybody else our slaves at that point? They themselves was a group within the group. And but the leader would not give in to that temptation. He maintained discipline. He maintained staying on course to complete the mission, which was to provide security for the compound. He knew his role was a support person to the millionaire whose vision was to bring this all together, to give them a place that they could come together and work as a team and survive this ordeal until COG, which is continuity of government, would be reestablished and they could go back to their lives. The owner a couple of times mentioned that he was going to try to hold on till FEMA showed up. And that could be a plus, that could be a negative. And in their case, that was going to be a big negative. But
and we're gonna get into that. Let's get into that next. I just wanted to talk about, because we were talking about mental health, right? And there was a situation that was totally, I think they were totally unprepared for, and that was the situation which we talked about when it comes to getting your bug out bag together, is to make sure that you have enough medication if you have a mental illness. So there was an individual who came there and was off of their meds, and that could have been a big, a big disaster, because this dude was out in the field throwing stuff up and catching it with his mouth. I mean, he was in his own world. And so that I just wanted to touch on that, because that's very important too. That for there to be some type of mental health professional or someone who may be able to deal with that. Yeah, go right ahead, brother.
And one other time that medicine was important, as the special forces team was headed there, they made a supply stop at a grocery store, and people were already fighting each other over the groceries. The lady, this private military contractor's wife, ran inside, but she came out with nothing but albuterol. She didn't have time to get anything else, and she needed that for her youngest child who had asthma real bad. So one of the most common forgotten. If you had to pick 10 things that's most commonly forgotten in a survival situation, people's prescription meds is one of the top 10 that is often forgotten and left behind. Even when people showed up during Hurricane Katrina at the Superdome, a lot of people forgot their meds and left them behind, and there was no meds there for them. So that was in a very important part that people need to keep in mind and remember. Know your members' needs medically wise, and see if you can buy 2 or 3 months ahead. And if they will let you do that, stockpile it, put it back, and make sure it's in your go bag when you have to leave. But I'll stop there for right now, Steve.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and get on into FEMA. I think there was not a FEMA representative, but a representative from I guess it was the local government. Brother
He was a
Aaron, you go
zoning
ahead and tell
director.
us more. The zoning, right?
He
Tell us
was a
more
zoning
about that.
director, and he came there, and the millionaire's assistant let him in, and this guy took an advantage, and he's peeping everything. He's scoping everything he can, and then he starts asking them, are they prepared to pay their taxes? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, look at all this that you got right here. And, there's a lot of people out there don't have nothing. I mean, and then you got too many people here without special permits. I mean, he was nothing but a zoning person. But I want to show a book here that I have in my possession here. Okay. In there, he has a paragraph that I want to read to you. And this Navy SEAL guy says, when FEMA knocks at your door, do not give the impression that you are a prepper. When they ask what you need, tell them you need everything they can provide for you. This is where you should put your best acting skills to work. The goal is to make them think you are just as unprepared and desperate as your neighbors. But then he also says at the bottom, if you look like a victim, FEMA will treat you like a victim, but will be unlikely to raid your home looking for supplies. Unfortunately for those people, anybody coming up there observing that compound would see a totally self-sufficient, self-reliant community going. There's no way they could have faked desperation in their situation. And the zoning commissioner saw them as being a prime turkey for the plucking. And in that time, within 3 days, the human body can start to shut down from lack of water, or you can start to die from drinking contaminated water. 21 days, you start to have the effects of not eating food. Food and water is going to be a powerful need for people and will cause people to be very desperate. The way I took that zoning commissioner, I took it as though he was desperate. He's looking for resources that he can hunker up. And when those people come to you, what you don't know is, are they sanctioned by the local government? Are they legitimate? Because in that movie, Texas and California seized all the military assets within their state, and they seized their own National Guard. And I don't want to say they broke away from the Union, but they wasn't taking orders from the federal government no more. They were doing their own thing. And you'll have rogue police elements. You'll have rogue National Guard elements that are just out to use their titles and their badges to come in and confiscate from people and then take it back to their own families. Now, the commissioner was saying that he wanted all their food for fair and equitable dispensing, but he also wanted to turn in all their guns and bullets.
Right.
And, some people would have to make a decision if they'd let him leave or not once he got out of there, because they know once he leaves, he's coming back mobbed up. He's going to have a group, and he came back with SWAT. And they came up with 2 big box trucks to take all the food, and SWAT came out hollering, throw down your guns and surrender all your weapons and stuff. And, you know, things got interesting at that point.
Right.
But
you make up a good point though about certain representatives, and this is aside from the movie to just going into after natural disasters occur. You have individuals who are scamming people who are in a very vulnerable situation, that they may not even have any connection to any official government position, but they look the role. And I think that that's something that people have to be very aware of as well in situations where you may have some type of emergency situation where certain governmental services are shut down. So yeah, that was very interesting right there. So yeah, that's
and could I
that's
make another
interesting. And so
observation?
I think really quick, I think that that's one of the reasons why it's very good to have a some type of solar powered radio, so that you can hear what is going on in the world, and make sure that you still are able to receive information. And I think I got mine. I always keep my solar powered, and I'll show it solar powered radio, and it's green, so it's affect the green screen is making it. But you know, you got the solar powered on the back here. You got it where you can crank it just in case there's no sunlight. But you know, I think that to have, you know, a radio is very important when these situations happen. Let's see here. Did you want to say anything more, Brother Aaron, or Brother Sanford, on that?
Well, like the woman. Go ahead, Sanford. You go ahead and go first.
Well, I was just gonna say real quick. You know, you mentioned about having like you mentioned the radio to be able to listen to some kind of communication outside. You know, what we have to be careful of too, though, is the resource we get the information from, because you know, when we talk about the one guy who was a little I want to be politically correct here, who was a little challenged, who was chasing butterflies. Let me say it that way.
Right.
He gave some information about a particular city where he said the power was on, and they were communicating well. And the one guy from the paramilitary company, how he was listening to a particular guy on the radio daily, but after hearing the information from the guy who may have been a little touched, you at that point, that put a whole different twist on it, because you don't know if he was just imagining all of it or part of it was true. And if the guy who was listening to the particular guy on the radio, if he was listening just to one avenue, and the radio resource didn't have information that was current. So
yeah,
you know, you can get caught up where you listen to one resource or get caught up in one thing, and you're missing a whole set of vital information that may be valuable to the whole community. That there are certain things available to you, but because you kind of isolated to this particular thing, that you'll never hear about that. You know, that's why a lot of times I tell people I've never been a big news guy, but if I look at news, I look at all of it, regardless of what I might think or feel politically, because I want to hear it from everywhere.
Both sides, right?
I want to hear from all 3 sides. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. Because there's going to be something from each area that I can get something from. So one of the things in doing that, when you talk about the resources from FEMA or whomever supposedly is coming, because I believe once we get that to a point of that desperation, if FEMA's coming, if they're not coming with resources, they're coming to take your resources. And and I believe that sincerely. You know, how that guy did a count on the weapons and all that kind of stuff. He was doing a visual in his mind. Now, I'll just say this. Sometimes when you get caught in the web, you can't get out. That might have been a case where he might have been caught in the web if it had been me. I'm
I
just
was
telling you,
thinking the same.
I'm,
Hey,
I'm telling you now. I'm not gonna let you go out and come back.
yeah.
No,
Once
no,
he
no.
said, once he said, "I'm coming back," I was like, "Well, you shouldn't have said that."
That's right. You
You
ain't got to
know,
worry about it because you're gonna be here. That's right.
right?
Go ahead, Aaron.
So,
Let's see. I noticed that two things would have got you engaged right away in that movie, whether you was in the city or out of city. If you had resources that people wanted, people were coming to take them. The neighbors inside the city, there's an endless number of people that were starting to come in. They were shooting the neighbors inside their houses who take the resources. Then another thing that would get you engaged right away is that as people were mobbing up into groups, if they saw you as being a threat, if your little group or whatever was a threat, even the PMC commander, when he knew that there was a survival compound on the other side of the ridge, he was like, we need to go over there and engage them. And he wanted to shoot them up out of there. He said, we can't have them within shooting distance of our compound. So if you had resources or you was a possibility of being a threat, you're going to get engaged. So people need to understand that and prepare for it mentally. But I'll
mhm.
stop there for right now.
All right. So, if you want, we can just go over a few more things and then close it on out. Um, One of the things that, of course, that I was looking at as well was after the explosion and the power went out. You know, they did mask up, though. They did mask up. So to some degree they did. But that whole situation was one where I think they were caught off guard. And so I think, in these type of disaster situations, we definitely, I think, need to make sure that we have a way that we're going to communicate with our loved ones, because that was a serious issue right there. And then, of course, another one is where we may want to meet up in case of a situation, because at that point in time, somebody was at school, somebody was at work, somebody was, everybody was doing their own thing. So I think that that's something that people have to really consider, as well as how they're going to come together, because it could be a situation to where the roads are jammed up and it might be a difficult situation to get to your children, or for your children to get to you. So, in that situation, how are we going to meet up and get back together? So I think that was, yeah, it's pretty serious situation right there. But that's pretty much all I have as far as the rest of the program is concerned. How about you all? Want to give any last comments on it?
Yeah, I would. After SWAT came and tried to engage, and the private military contractors drove them off, the leader was shot by that zoning commissioner guy, and the wife prayed and prayed all over him and everything. And then later she said that she was filled with love. She said her God was bigger than the math, and she was going to bet it all on faith. And, by luck, others coming in brought in enough skills that they was able to increase the food production, which saved the day. Now, I looked through my Bible, chapter 3, Proverbs, verses 5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not in all your understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I felt that was what that lady was following. That was her belief. Maybe God got the guy out the way by letting him be shot so that she could come forward with her energy and lead the group in a different direction. Again, she was extremely lucky. Now that some people could argue, well, was God's will. There was no luck involved. But if the neighbors start stealing the food, if pests start to get into the food, if they start to deal with food blight or fungus that could kill off the crops, they have any sort of food shortage, they're going to have starvation, because now the numbers of people exceed the mathematical formula of what that land will feed. So they have to have a
And that's
perfect
exactly,
situation, a perfect
and that's what
harvest each
happened
and
too,
every
though.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that the food supply it did get contaminated, and what you're saying is, what you're saying is very true, is that, I think emotion, sometimes we have to rise above emotion. And I understand what you're saying as far as, her belief, but I think to a large degree too, she was just so emotionally overwhelmed that her it's one thing to believe in God, you know what I mean, but at the same time, I think that situation, that ending, that what me, I'm not trying to be funny, but I don't see that was God. I saw that being the writers, right, that they wrote it to where it fortunately worked itself out to be that way. Because in all truth and honesty, when they went in there and they saw that a lot of their supplies had been contaminated by the rodents, that right there was they were already in trouble to some degree. So yeah, that's something that is really going to be a difficult thing to deal with when it comes down to survival, but yeah, I
But let
just
me
wanted
say
to
this
throw that
last
in
thing.
there.
Yeah, let me say this last thing to finish my point.
Hmm.
What I took from the movie is, where do you find balance between faith and probability? Where's that balance point? Because I admit, I lean on my own understanding, my own talents, my own abilities, and I probably need to get more out of that. But I've always trained that way, to count on what I can do, and that's going to be a hard nut for me to crack, to break that mold that I then got myself into. But there has to be a balance between faith and your own ability. Where do you draw the line? And I can't answer that question. Maybe you guys can.
Well, I know that my mother, I never forgot this. I think I said this one time before. My mother mentioned about using good sense. And I was 19. She said, no such thing as common sense, boy. She said, but you're supposed to have good sense in life. And I believe that, I told Aaron when we first talked about it, and I don't think he knew it then. I said, well, the company is a faith-based company that actually created the movie. I said, so that's why that twist was put into there in the end. And when I saw it, I knew exactly why they put it there. And
Yeah.
I understood and I respect it. I
Yeah.
think that and I think this is where I talk about how it shows, and just say that's the case for real. It's with somebody, how it shows that you can think you have planned for something and prepared for something, and something else can take over and totally discard what you think is in place. And how when the wife made that decision, how it changed the whole dynamic. So at that moment, it worked out at that moment for what they had
Hmm.
going there, and it could have went the other way completely. Um, but I think that goes back to the mindset of your nucleus in the very beginning.
Hmm.
This is
Hmm.
I'm telling you, this is an ongoing thing. And so you think, so you shall be. So if you have those kind of dynamics in your household or within your circle, those kind of things are the kind of things you need to talk about, even if they're not ironed out completely. The fact that you bring them up, so if these things reoccur, you can reference back to those things. but you need to have these kind of conversations ahead of time. What are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? You know what I mean? That's even if you are sheltering at home and you got neighbors. You need to know what extent your neighbors are willing to go to or not go to make this thing work within your community that's right there with you. And and any sign that you see that's outside of what you think the real mission is, you better take it for what it is and realize this may not be a fit for what I need to do or what we need to do to make it. And nobody really talks about that because we don't ever want to talk about cutting off somebody we care about or cutting off somebody in the environment that we know or cutting off John across the street. Well, I mean, when the stuff hit the fan, desperation will cause you to do desperate things. And self-preservation is number one. And it's number one. So when I look at the movie, I thought the movie was entertaining. I thought it had some great points to it.
Very
Even
good.
when you get to the end, because I do believe that could be a factor. But now I'm not gonna get too heavy on a religious thing, but I'm gonna say this, and I say this to Aaron, and you know, I'm pretty, a lot of women tell me I'm pretty hard when it comes to male and female things. But as that changed and the woman became kind of the one who led stuff and she changed the order. Well, I remember when that happened at one time in the Bible in a place called the Garden of Eden. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. It got a little out of hand there where somebody took another little turn, and this is why we are with the way we are right now. I mean, and I can go through history. I can look, it was a great man named Samson. And for some reason, Samson lost all his whereabouts and everything when he told about his little secret with his hair. You know what I'm saying? So I think that even in letting when the women, it's almost like the women took charge. And I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm not saying they're not capable. But
right.
But
Definitely.
But history repeats itself. And I think that you have to have an order that's put in place that everybody believes in. And it has to be that way. So if you look at the guy who had the homestead, his wife, actually, if you look at it, there were hints all the way through the movie where she was kind of leaning the other way. And so those kind of things need to be worked out in the beginning of whatever your personal situation is. Because unfortunately, gentlemen, something's coming.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, definitely with that family dynamics that we just have to have it so on point. And as the Bible says, we have to be evenly yoked. So we have to be on the same page. When shit hits the fan, we better be on the same page because in the very beginning, when they were at the gates and I'm not talking about people who are in desperation being stray cats or dogs. I'm in no way trying to dehumanize anyone. However, what I am saying is that once you start feeding people and they start possibly telling other people, then you got another situation on your hands. And that's really what they had on their hands when I believe they made that mistake in the beginning, because either you are or you aren't. You know what I mean? Either you're going to let them people know that you don't have anything for them, or you're going to let them know that you're going to ration something out for them. But to keep them walking that tightrope is not right either. So I think that was something that in the movie just definitely has to be understood. Once you and your family get in the situation where you're in a secure place, that we not letting nobody in. So yeah.
And once you start giving out those little fragments of things, the expectations of those people is to get more of that because they believe you have enough to give because you gave them that initially. Right. They won't take it like, well, brother Steve just gave me this, or brother Aaron gave me this. No, they're going to say, well, if they did that, they got a lot behind that wall.
Exactly. You may not have a lot behind that wall.
Right.
So yeah, that's very important. So that was a very interesting movie. And there are some other movies that are, like I said, that are out. I think that would be very interesting for us to break down. So we might have to do this with another movie sometime here in the future. But Aaron, did you have something to say? I'm sorry.
I got one last thing I want to say because I want to surmise a lot of what I reported on. The bottom
Okay.
line is this: anything that comes out right now that can take our power grid down for 12 months to 2 years, our lives are going to change. And all the trauma that you're going to go through, both physically and mentally, you will never be the same. It's impossible to go back to being the same person you was if you survive through that situation. Your survival will be earned one day at a time. And the more, I say, skill sets you have, the more experience you have, the more gear and equipment and food and stuff that you can put back now while things is peaceful and it's easy to do, that helps to increase your chance. And to give yourself another increase is going to be based upon the type and quality of the community that you surround yourself with, what skills that they can bring to the table, what assets and resources they're going to bring to the table. You guys can all come together and work as a team. As I said earlier, teamwork makes the dream work. You got a better chance of making through that situation. Anyone that wants to play Lone Wolf McQuade or Rambo, you're not going to last long. Somebody's going to take you out. But if you can group up with good quality people with the same mindset, you guys all thinking the same thing, you got a better chance of surviving that situation. Because whether people realize it or not, when that power grid goes down, it's going to be the worst case scenario imaginable. And I cannot overemphasize that. And I'll stop there.
Just to touch on what you were saying real quick is what a funny moment in that movie was the guy. He said I'm a lone wolf or something like that. He's
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And that guy, he came after he left. He said, "Man, lone wolves die." You know what I mean? So that is a very good, interesting point that he did make, though, is that it is better to be a part of a group than to be by yourself. So yeah, that was very interesting. But if you all don't have anything else, we will go ahead and wrap this one on up. All right, all right. So I'll go ahead and wrap it on up. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in and watching Refuge Depot. And as always, we want you to subscribe to our channel, let others know, join our Patreon channel. That's patreon.com/Refuge Depot. And as always, your support helps us to produce more, not just more programs, but also to produce more things that we have coming up in the future. I'll just leave it as that. So with that, want to thank you. May God continue to bless you with the light of truth and understanding, and prepare. Get you some non-perishable foods. Begin to stock up on non-perishable foods and water. Those are two of the most important things that you can start with right there. Get you a first aid kit. And with that, just go check out our site, and we'll see you next week. God willing. God bless.